I think we can start now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and joining our community prayer at Harvard Seminary. And today's session will be led by the Reverend Dr. Debbie Palato Fontaine, Interim Senior Minister at Storrs Congregational Church, UCC. Debbie is a graduate of Harvard Seminary and the WLI and was ordained in 2010 in the UCC. She has served in a variety of ministry roles, including interim pastor, spiritual director and teacher at Mercy by the Sea in Madison, retreat presenter, global mission volunteer, and congregational consultant. While in her long-time role as university professor, Debbie spent her summers volunteering through Global Ministries, UCC, teaching English to secondary teachers in remote provinces of China. Was lead teacher in a 3-year summer program for pastors through the Chinese Christian Council, representing all provinces, and lecturing at seminaries in Beijing and Beijing. And she also spent time in other places in the world, and I don't want to spoil the fun for her to tell herself. So I'll give the time to Debbie, please.
Thank you so much, Hans. And yes, please go to the next slide. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to see you, and thank you for being here today for this presentation. As you may have read in my or in Hans' introductory flyer, I was always so enamored, for whatever reason, by Pearl Buck's writings. My high school job was working in the library in my hometown, and even before high school, I just loved reading everything that Pearl Buck wrote. All of her novels, her autobiography, her biography. And perhaps it was because of that I always had this dream to teach English in China. That was my dream. And as some of you may know, Pearl's parents were missionaries in China, so she grew up there as a young girl. And, you know, I think it wasn't until she was 8 or 9 that she realized that she wasn't Chinese. And then when she came back to the United States, she and her husband started Green Hills Farm in Pennsylvania, and she adopted several children with special needs and children who were living in poverty. And people can still sponsor a child now through the Pearl S. Buck Foundation. So I'll be talking about Haiti and my work there and the work of Be Like Brit in Grand Guave, Haiti. And I just have so much in common, I think, a love of China and working with children and caring for them. So Pearl was really an inspiration to my work of service outside of the church. The next slide. So Global Ministries developed a conference, what they call a critical presence. And that means they wanted all of their global volunteers to only go where we were invited, to be able to offer a service that no one else was able to do in that particular place, and to walk hand in hand with our global neighbors. And this Hebrew scripture from the book of Isaiah has always resonated with me. I use the hymn, "Here I Am, Lord," at my ordination, and this is probably my favorite verse, certainly in both the Hebrew and Christian scriptures. And, you know, I always feel like I'm Samuel when God calls out, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And I'm kind of there in the back room, you know, "Here I am, send me." So that has always been a guiding theological perspective for me to do God's work. The next slide. So I always, as I said with this Hebrew scripture, I always had this theology of integrating spirituality with mission and service. And I think I developed that philosophy while I was at Hartford Seminary. And I really wanted to encounter God outside the walls of the church. And that's what my ordination paper was based on. Caring for God's people, as I said, and really doing my best to be the heart, the hands and feet of Christ in the world. So my dream did come true through Global Ministries. And one summer, way back in the year 2000, I got to go to China, starting in Inner Mongolia through Global Ministries. And my first teaching assignment was through the Amity Foundation in Nanjing, which was a social service and educational organization. And so off I went to teach in Inner Mongolia. And every time I was in China, my birthday is in late July. So I always got to celebrate my birthday in July in China. So that was also a treat. You can go to the next slide, Hans. And this was just a picture of some of the classrooms and what it was like in Inner Mongolia. And then the next slide, I think, is Anhui Province. In the town of Huangshan, Anhui Province is considered the poorest province in the country of China. And Huangshan means yellow mountain. So the Amity Foundation, after I was teaching for several summers, teaching secondary school teachers, the China Christian Council developed a 3-year summer program for pastors. I think they selected either 2 or 3 pastors from every single province in China. And they asked the Amity Foundation, could you recommend a teacher to be our lead teacher to head this 3-year program? And I was, of course, very honored and privileged to be able to be selected for that. So I got to work teaching English and teaching Bible studies and just sharing so many different cultural experiences with pastors from all different provinces for 3 summers, June through August each summer. And then after that experience, I was often invited back to China to speak at the pastors' seminaries and to do a little bit of teaching. And also I was able to assist the lead minister, the woman you see in the left-hand corner in the green shirt, Pastor Ma. She would invite me to also preach at her church and help her with the services as well. Next slide. And so, because this is an interreligious presentation and because of my background at Hartford Seminary, these 2 scripture verses from, I already mentioned that, the Hebrew scripture and then the Christian scripture, and then from the Quran, I chose these 2 scriptures that have also guided my work outside, as I said, the walls of the church. And I'm so grateful, even though I have graduated, 10 years ago now from Hartford Seminary, I'm so grateful for my experiences there and for the many friends that I have found there, and certainly working under Doctors Winter and Landau, 2 people who, of course, I will never forget. And then my work led me to South Korea. And this started out as a partnership between the Presbyterian Church of South Korea and what was the historical Connecticut Conference of the United Church of Christ. And I was at an annual meeting one Saturday, and they had a partnership table set up. And I was thinking about, where do I want to go on my first sabbatical? And that's how I ended up at Dong Suwan Church for 3 months over the summer for my first sabbatical, which is a mega church. There was a senior pastor and 5 associates, and the pastors actually lived in apartments in the church. And I was also given an apartment. And my duties were to teach English classes at several churches, as well as Bible studies in different churches, and to lead pastors' groups as well. The next slide. This is just the outdoor of Dong Suwan Church, one of their weekend festivals. I also had the opportunity to work in one of the kindergarten rooms. And then these women were in my little one-room apartment getting me ready for a farewell sermon, which of course was very emotional. Morale Church was another church that I worked at with Reverend Kim, and I was able to, while I was there, develop a partnership with Morale Church and my home church, the First Congregational Church of Woodstock. And then my journey led me to Ghana, and that was because of a very strong friendship that I had with a former student in the peacemaking program at Hartford Seminary. Some of you may remember the Reverend Francis Aqua, and he was a Methodist minister. And after we both graduated, he invited me to come to Ghana because he was finally able to go home back to his family. And so I worked with him at his church and was invited to preach at some different churches, to offer some Bible studies. I also worked in the fields planting the moringa plant, which was considered a very healthy, nurturing kind of plant, because so many families in the countryside and outside of, certainly of the city, the children were malnourished. And so I would help to plant the plants, and then we would deliver the seedlings to different church families and encourage them to plant them in their gardens. And this is just one market scene. My husband and I finally were brave enough to go on the taps by ourselves to the marketplace, and of course had many wonderful experiences there. So I'm grateful to Francis for inviting me and just learning about so much of what was happening theologically in Ghana and the work of the church. And then finally, where I have been volunteering for the past 10 years at the Be Like Brit orphanage, which we now call Brit's Home, an orphanage, a home in the shape of a bee for Brittany. So I will let Hans play this 30-second video and then talk about my work now in Haiti. So the girl you see in the yellow t-shirt, Brittany Gangle, she was a sophomore at Lynn University in South Florida. And during January intercession, several of her classmates and several professors went to work with children in Haiti. And they were there only 2 days before that massive earthquake in January of 2010 happened, where over 500,000 people were killed. So, and Brittany was one of them. Her room was in the Hotel Montana, and everyone was walking back to the hotel after a hard day of work. And Brittany was, before she got in the shower, she texted her mom, "I love Haiti so much. I love the people, they're so wonderful." And kind of a typical, passionate college student type of sentiment. And she said, "I want to come back to Haiti and start an orphanage myself." And Brittany's room was the last room in the corridor. And so she was actually in the shower when the earthquake hit. And it took 33 days for her body to be recovered. So her parents, Len and Cheryl Ann, who lived right in Rutland, Massachusetts, so this is a homegrown story, decided to take their daughter at their word. And they literally gave up their lives, their jobs, sold their vacation homes, and built what I think is the most beautiful earthquake-proof home for children in Haiti. And so now we have 33 boys and 33 girls, which is symbolic for the 33 days also. And Len and Cheryl Ann wrote this book early on, Heartache and Hope in Haiti, the Brittany Gangle story. You can go to the next slide, Hans, please. So in addition to, volunteering when this was just Brit's home, I again had the honor to actually start a school within the home, because for years we were thinking about, wouldn't it, it was our dream to have our own school at Brit's home. And our children were, going off to different schools in the community, and we just were not pleased with the education that they were getting. The classrooms were extremely crowded. Often the teachers were not well trained. The schools did believe in corporal punishment, so our children were always coming home, talking about how they had been hit in the classroom by their teachers. There was a lot of bullying going on. And the Haitian curriculum followed only a rote memorization curriculum, nothing else. So I started Brit's Academy last year. We are now in our second year. Our last day of school and final exams are coming up the second week of June. And we are completing our second year for grades 3 through 10. And next year, starting in September, we will also include, of course, grade 11. But the interesting thing is we are going to be accepting children who are old enough to be in grades 1 through 3 for our staff members. We've opened it up to staff members who have children that age, and now they can have their children come to Brit's Academy as well. So this is part of the community service and our integration and keeping our children, of course, involved in their community and with their families and family visits as much as possible. We recently, I think you might see it in another photo, we recently had, right at Christmas, actually Christmas Day, a little girl, 1.5 years old, Janelia. I think you can go to the next slide, Hans. There she is with her caregiver. So she is going to be our newest generation of leaders in Haiti. And these women with the jugs of water on their heads, what we do at 5 a.m. outside of the gate, outside of our security gate, we open up our water so that people can come down on from the mountain and get all the water they need. And then they carry these heavy jugs of water on their heads for over a mile back up in the mountain, either barefoot or in flip-flops. And when I'm there wearing my good sneakers, I barely get up the mountain. So I'm always amazed at how they can do this so successfully. So our curriculum at Brit's Academy is an active learning methodology. It's project-centered learning. The primary children had a science fair project this past Friday. We have an intensive English language curriculum. And my job is now what's called superintendent of Brit's Academy as a volunteer staff member. And so every week I have teacher training with both the primary teachers and the secondary teachers, things like behavior management, lesson planning and assessment, psychological and social development, learning styles. And before the pandemic, I was in Haiti every month. Now all of my work is on Zoom, but I hope to be back there during the winter months again when it's safe. You can go on to the next slide. So here are just a picture of some of our children. There were so many photos to choose, actually. But if you'd like to find out more about Brit's home, the website is Be Like Brit, B-R-I-T, all one word, belikebrit.org. And you can see many videos and many updates on our children. And these are some children in their uniforms. But we're just so proud of the work that they are doing. And they love the academy. They love, they even love taking their exams. They're just so happy to be there. And right now, I was in a meeting this morning, we're actually planning some social dances and some social outdoor events, especially for our older teenagers. You can go to the next slide. And I decided to end this presentation with one of my favorite quotes by Buchner, where he says, "Your calling is where your own greatest joy intersects with the needs of the world." And again, I think I used this quote in the program at my ordination. And for whatever reason, God chose me to do some of this work, right now being in Haiti, and something that really gives me great joy, and helping in some small way to improve the quality of life for our children and their families in Haiti. And I'm so grateful for that. So I think we have a couple minutes, Hans, perhaps for questions, since we may not have coffee hour. Is that okay?
Yeah. So if any of you have questions to Reverend Debbie, please feel free to unmute yourself and say something. Questions, comment?
Not a question, Debbie. This is MT.
Hello,
And
MT.
I just want to say you make my heart sing. You fulfill the deepest parts of my desire to be out there exactly where you are, doing what you're doing. Bless you. Thank you. Hartford Seminary is so proud of you, and Women's Leadership Institute celebrates you. And I just want to thank you and say, I love you, and I will keep you and your mission and ministries in my prayers.
Thank you so much, MT. Thank you.
Debbie, this is Linda Choser. I am so glad I took the time, because you approached me to help you do a few weeks back, and not even knowing who you were. And I am blown away. What a calling, what boots on the ground. My goodness, you put a whole new spin on that. It's just beautiful to see what you're doing, what you've done, and what you continue to do. That Brittany's story is just so moving. I was brought to tears when you told me. So thank you for sharing your story and the work that you do.
Thank you, Linda. It's so good to see you.
If there is any other comments, questions?
Are we on gallery view, or at least I'm not, Hans, so that I can see everyone?
Yeah, we are in gallery view.
Okay. Maybe I just.
You can see 6 people at a time.
Yes, yeah, I can see 6 people, right? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy, for your comment and for everyone's comments.
Hans, maybe if you end the screen share, unless
Oh,
there's
yeah.
something else coming, then you'll be able to see everybody.
Yeah, now I can see all of you. Wonderful.
There we go.
Thank you. It's nice to see some friends and some of my church members here as well as people from Hartford Seminary. And can you see the people? Hello, boys and girls. Bonsoir. In Haiti, these are our children waving to you now in grade 7 to 10. They're in our program office watching this presentation. Bonsoir. Thank you for being here, boys and girls. I miss you and love you.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask question to Debbie. So what are the difficulties that you find to nurture this academy and your work in Haiti?
I didn't hear the first part, Hans.
What are some difficulties you encounter?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. Obviously, right now, the pandemic, the last time I was there in person was the end of last February. So and fortunately I have Zoom to have my teacher meetings and training, but it's not like being there in person, obviously. So that, of course, has been a hindrance to really doing effectively of my work there. And then there are the cultural things, and I can't tell you, the first few years when I started teacher training, I was kind of doing teacher training like I was, doing it with my student teachers at the college. And then I realized, this isn't going to work. I have to understand their culture and their way of doing things and be much more collaborative and get their opinion on how to deal with behavior management and how to involve children in different things. And, the children in Haiti, if it wasn't for them, they're just doing so amazingly well. 10 years ago, we only had little children. Now we have more teenagers than children. And we're starting a transition program for our children who are 18 and above. Will be moving into their own housing outside of the gate and living independently. So it's, and sometimes the difficulty is, as in many developing countries, especially this past year and a half, Haiti has, as you've read, I'm sure, and have seen, such political unrest. And it's just not safe for the Haitians themselves and certainly for visitors. And, I really feel for the teachers who have to walk long ways to get to their teaching job and for them to be safe. So those are just a few of the things, Hans.
Thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. And we still have 2 minutes if anyone wants to say anything or ask question.
I'm Samai. Debbie, how are you?
Yes, hello, hi.
How are you? Thank you for the presentation. Really, it's a great experience because you have also impacted our life. I'm Samai from Boston. So maybe if you share something, how young people could really follow your example to really serve people around the world, really how really they should be motivated to do that.
Sure. Thank you, Sam. So, I think probably starting with young people, whether they are churched or non-churched, doesn't matter, but, just getting them involved in the community and encouraging families to to travel with their children, to learn about other cultures, to respect other cultures, to have an interreligious understanding. And, one thing actually, Sam, that we're doing here at Storrs Congregational Church in June, and our director of faith formation, Lisa, is on this Zoom presentation. We're having a summer program geared toward middle schoolers called Take Heart, Take Action. And every day we'll be doing 1 or 2 service projects for the community and inviting some speakers in. And we're hoping this will make our children in this community anyway very interested in learning more about what we can do in the world. And certainly, I had the opportunity to do that with my college students. I don't know if you can see the poster behind me, but I used to bring college students from Becker College to Haiti all of the time, and we would build homes for people who were just living under a blue tarmac. And when students came back, every single student that I took there said, this experience changed my life forever. And they went on to come back to Haiti more. They got involved in service. So I think the more that we can work with our youth and with our college students and just have service opportunities available for them, once I think they get involved and they see the beauty and the love and the compassion of literally walking hand in hand and loving our global neighbors, it does change them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that ends our community prayer what I gleaned from Debbie's presentation is that we need to be sensitive to the needs of people around us and even beyond our surroundings in the global world we are living right now. So thank you, Debbie, and thank you also for our little friends from Haiti who join us through Zoom, and all of you who are coming. And for next week, join us again for the community prayer with Reverend Oscar Brockmeyer from Spiritual Life Center for another session. So thank you, everyone. And today we won't have a community hour, coffee hour. We are expecting you to come next week. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haiti. Au revoir, Haiti.
Bye,
Thank you.
Katie.
Thank you, Hartford Seminary. Bye-bye. Au revoir.
Thank you.
Bye, boys and girls.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Bye.